first, Mr. Ramirez, or should we?
We're ready for the presentation.
Yeah, let's go with the presentation.
We have Stacy Guzman, our MCAG Executive Director, that will be joining us. Thank you for being here, by the way.
Thank you. Okay. May I begin? Great. Well, I could if I was ready. Thank you, Mayor Moran. Good evening to you and members of the council, staff, and to the Livingston community. As mentioned, my name is Stacy Guzman, or Guzman. I am the Executive Director for the Merced County Association of Governments, and I'm here to provide you with an update on Measure V, which, believe it or not, it has been 9 years since the Merced County voters passed the measure. There we go. Okay, so as I mentioned, so Measure V is a half-cent sales tax, transportation sales tax that was passed by voters here in Merced County in 2016. It's for a 30-year time frame, and all funds that are collected through this measure must be spent on transportation needs in Merced County and according to the funding categories that were set forth in the expenditure plan. The plan stipulates that if you look at the pie chart, that 50% of all the funding that comes in through the measure has to go directly to local jurisdictions for local transportation needs. Those are the green areas. In the gold and orange, that's totals 44% for regional projects. And it's broken down into gold and orange because the funding account is split between the east side and the west side of Merced County, with 27% going to the east side and 17% on the west side. And then the small blue sliver is a 5% allocation that goes to transit uses, and 1% that you can see just kind of there next to transit goes to MCAG for administrative costs like audits and reporting and whatnot. I know that I think what's always most interesting, or people are mostly interested in, is the funding for transportation, street and road projects. But as I mentioned, we do have 5% of the funding that goes to transit, and my other hat is the executive director for the transit agency. So I have 2 transit slides, and they are really great benefits for the Livingston community. So since the inception of the measure, there's been about $9.5 million generated, and the board of directors has decided to use these funds primarily for 2 programs. One is a fair subsidy program. So it was the very first decision to spend the very first dollar of measure funds was back in 2017, when the board created the fair subsidy program that allowed veterans, seniors, and ADA eligible passengers to ride our bus service free of charge, subsidized the fare box with our Measure V revenue. That program was expanded in 2021 to make our paratransit services fare free. And then what this slide is from our latest annual report that showed that now we're looking at over 200,000 free rides that we're providing annually through the program, thanks to Measure V. And of those, you can see the breakdown of about 144,000 that are seniors, 5,000 veterans, and almost 61,000 were ADA eligible passengers. And if you look at that cumulatively over since the measure was passed, we've reached over 1 million free rides thanks to the subsidy program. The second use of the transit measure funds has been the purchase of battery electric buses. We introduced our first battery electric bus 2 years ago. We now have a total of 9 zero-emission buses in service in Merced County. If you've ever found yourself behind one, the slogan on the left is real. We have tail end wraps that say, "Thanks to Measure V, you can't smell me." I had that idea many, many years ago, and I used to joke about it, and I don't think my staff knew that I was serious, but now you see them on the buses. I still love it. It makes me smile every time. So so let's go in kind of the nitty-gritty of, I think, what most people are interested in, and that's the transportation project funding. So there's going to be a lot of numbers here. I'm happy to answer questions or go back to slides, but I'll do my best to lay it all out. So in 8 years, which is what we're talking about in terms of our total revenue since the inception, the Measure V program across the county has generated $191 million. This is $70 million more than what we were estimating to be at this time when we passed the measure in 2016. So that's something to be excited about. And as I mentioned, 50% or half the revenue, which is 95 million and some change, has since then been allocated out to our 7 local jurisdictions by formula, and the city councils of each of those jurisdictions, or the board of supervisors for the county, get to decide how those funds are spent locally, so as long as they're being spent on transportation projects. And then 44%, as I mentioned, those were those gold and yellow colors on the pie chart, are for regional projects divided again into the east side and west side, and that equates to $51 million in total for east side regional projects. So let's see then on the bottom, in the white, is really what this means for the city of Livingston. So if you look over the same time period, the city of Livingston's been allocated $11,645,011 in measure funding, 4 million. So if you go down that allocated column in green, 4 million of that 11 is in local funding, and and then if you go across, it shows what's been expended. So you have 4 million, 4.2 in local funding, about half of it has been expended, and you have that equates to about 4 years of your local funding allocation accrued and available for your use. And then below that, under the East Side Regional Funding, again, that's 7.4 that's been allocated to projects in Livingston. You see that 626,000 has been expended, and so you have available balance of East Side Regional Funding to projects that are here in Livingston in the amount of $6.7 million. This is the fun one. So I want to talk a little bit about, I love this statistic, or these notes. So I want to take a minute to talk a little bit about the difference of local versus regional funding, because each of those pots were designed in the measure to serve different purposes and have different processes for how the funds are allocated. So the local funding pot, it was intended to be direct funding to the jurisdictions to address your local transportation needs and to provide the decision-making authority at the local level so that you all can decide how you would like to spend the funds. To address the equity issue, there was a formula developed on how those funds would be, of the 50%, how that gets allocated out to the jurisdictions. And we'll talk about what that looks like, but it's essentially taking into account your population and your road miles. So that's how we address the equity issue. The regional funding, however, is different. So when we didn't talk as much about equity back when we were setting that account up beyond the east-west equity issue. Some of that maybe have been around the MCAG circles for a while, are familiar with that nuance, that balance of making sure that while most of the population's on the east side, you have 99 on the east side, that we're ensuring that proper investment's happening on the west side of our county, particularly in our rural areas. So the decision to split those funds and to split the geography at the San Joaquin River is a way to equitably make sure the regions were getting their share. But after that, there was no consideration in terms of equitable distribution of funds necessarily, because it was really intended to deliver the region's big, complex, costly regional projects that bring regional benefits. So between the two, it was an attempt to cover both equity and the regional need for the delivery of these big, costly projects. And examples of those would be like, you know, I know we're done here, but like a 99 widening project, which has been completed prior to the measure, but, you know, any state highway project, any major regional corridor that either needs to be widened or rehabbed, those are the types of projects that would be looking at for regional. And the process of allocating those funds is a little bit more complicated. We have East and West Side regional project committees that are essentially an elected official from each of the jurisdictions that are in the East Side or the West Side. And then those recommendations go to the MCAG Governing Board for final approval. And that is when the amount of funding, the projects, and when the funding is available to those projects gets decided. So I say all of that to now show you that bottom line. I do think it's important, though, for people to be able to know, even when equity across the jurisdictions in terms of funding distribution isn't at the heart of the decision making, that there still is some sense to how it is being distributed. So if you look at those 8 years of revenue that we've generated, the city of Livingston, between all funding sources, has received, the city of Livingston for the East Side regional funding has received 22.5% of the revenue. And that's a really good number, considering your population is 8% of the East Side population and your local road miles is 2%. So the amount of funds that you've been able to attract to projects to Livingston is actually really solid. Okay, so this, I fear my tables are going to become less and less legible because more and more numbers and more years are added and the tables start getting smaller, or bigger and the numbers start getting smaller. But this is the local projects funding distribution table. A memo goes out every year. This went out right at the start of the fiscal year to all the jurisdictions so that you know what your estimated allocation is of your local funding. The city of Livingston for this year, the estimate, it's generally between $500,000 and $550,000 annually from your local funding allocation. That's assuming a $24 million overall program revenue, which is roughly where we've been. The way it works is that because we had some very, very small jurisdictions like Gustine and Dos Palace, that if it was strictly based on your population and your road miles, it was not enough money to even do a project in a decade. So the idea of having a base amount where everyone started out with a base amount of 150, and then after that, there was this formula that took into account a 50-50 formula of your road miles, percentage of your road miles, percentage of your population divided in half, and that gave you your 50-50 formula amount, and you add that to your base, and that's how you get your estimated allocation. I'm just going to confuse you with so many numbers, you're going to have no questions for me. These are just some pictures of a few local projects that have been completed over the years. We always love projects, so even cell phone pictures, anyone in the community, send them to us. Public Works, whoever's out there, we love pictures. But these are some of the successes that we celebrate. So you don't need to read all of this, but what I wanted to show is this is the universe of regional projects that have been funded by the measure since inception. It's that you can see there where the Livingston projects are. I'll read them to you so I know they're hard to see, but it's the Highway 99 Winton Parkway on-ramp turn lane that was completed a couple years ago. And then there are 4 projects that are in progress: the Hammett and Campbell intersection improvement project, Phase 1 of the Transit Center, Winton Parkway Rehabilitation Project, and the Campbell Corridor Project. Just a note, when I say in progress, it doesn't necessarily translate the same way, let's say, Public Works would say it's in progress. For us, a project that's in progress means you have a funding agreement, and that project is in some state of development or delivery. So there may be a project study report happening, there might be some design work happening, it can be all kinds of places. It doesn't mean it's in construction. So I don't want to get anyone confused that these projects are under construction. Okay, so then let's look specifically at yours here in Livingston. So just to reorient you, you can see the jurisdictions in the far left column. That's the sponsor jurisdiction. You've got your project list. Then you're looking in column A at the amount of funding that has been allocated. Column B in the red is the amount of funding that's been expended for those projects. And then you have your balance, and your blue columns are any future funding and the total. So you can see Livingston's projects here that I mentioned in progress, the funding that's available, what has been expended, and what is available. And then the last project that I had said already was completed was the Highway 99 Winton Parkway on-ramp project. And this is the total list of East Side projects that have been completed since the measure was passed. Okay, so looking ahead, and I'll defer a bit to the mayor and the city manager as to how much you would like me to talk about the current process of what we're at and the submissions. But right now we're in the middle of a 2025 implementation plan update. What that means is every 2 years, we look at the program of projects, we add 2 new years out into the future of new funding that's coming in, say, okay, 28, 29, 29, 30, and we ask the jurisdictions first, do you have projects that are currently being developed that you need more money? And if not, do you have new projects you want to add? And the board has directed us to look at them in this way. We always prioritize projects that are existing. So if you have a project you're working on and you need more money, that's going to be the priority. They have directed us to look really sharply at how regional projects are, what are the regional benefits to the regional projects, and then to prioritize new regional project requests that leverage other funding sources. You don't want the measure to fund the entire thing. It's nice when you can get a grant or other kinds of local funding sources that can offset the cost or the use of the measure. And then to program our new regional projects out in the outer years, which is a little bit more of a technical note than necessarily one that's important for this conversation. This is the slide that's probably illegible. I promise you it's not important that you read all the notes. But I had to put a very clear, and this is really my last meaningful slide, and then I'm happy to open for any questions. I had to put in big red, this is for discussion purposes only. This is not an official programming document, so I hope at some point someone doesn't come back to me and say, you showed me a slide where this project had money. This is just to help demonstrate the requests. This is the very complicated document that reflects the projects that have been funded and where new money is being requested. What I really wanted to highlight here is that we are always looking into the future. So we're looking at having money in those green columns, 28, 29, 29, 30. We estimate we'll have about $14 million in those 2 years. But there's so much need in the region that when we opened it up for funding requests, we got almost $20 million in funding requests. So we're in the process right now of working with each jurisdiction to identify your priorities, and recognizing trying to develop new strategies on how you can be creative with the funding you have to deliver the projects you have first, and then prepare to move forward with your new projects. I'll just note here that the submissions that we received from the city, in addition to a funding request for additional funding for the Winton Parkway rehab project, was the introduction of 2 new projects that are still under consideration, which is the North Main Street rehab project and the Main and Davis Street signal reconfiguration project. Like the city's requests, along with some of the others on the east side, we just simply do not have enough money. So we're trying to look at creative strategies. I think that unless the mayor would like me to speak more about some of the ideas about moving some of these funds, I'm happy to go into that, or I can just say, if you want more information about anything I said, you can go to our website. And I'm happy to answer any questions now, or at any time you can contact me at that phone number and email address. I'm happy to have any more conversation. For the members of the public